It was a noise like a train coming towards you in a tunnel. And it just got louder and louder and louder. It was roaring and just this massive noise.
And it's just that howling, the darkness, and feeling that when you open that door, should you live through this, whether you're the only ones left. It's that noise, it's the sirens prior.
A cyclone is imminent.
That terrifies me, you know, it terrifies me now and it did then.
It never, ever, ever leaves you, that sound. And it was relentless and it just kept on going and going.
The noise of the wind was horrendous. I'll never forget it.
The sound was just horrifying.
Darwin, 1974. A city almost wiped out by Japanese bombs during World War II is booming.
So what was life like in Darwin in 1974?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was very laid back, nice tropical climate. The neighbours all knew each other. The new suburbs being built.
Aileen Scott and her young family were living in the Darwin suburb of Ludmilla. Aileen's father, Ian McLeod, a keen amateur cinematographer, had come to visit for Christmas and filmed this vision around the top end. He would be on hand to capture the devastation of one of Australia's worst natural disasters. This never-before-seen footage shows the destruction Darwin woke to on Christmas Day.
A full force of the cyclone struck in the darkness of the early hours of the morning. It filled the air with missiles as deadly as was their destructive power. Cars were tossed about, people were whisked away with their houses, and household furniture was smashed to kindling.
By the time Tracy had passed through the city, 66 people were dead, hundreds more were seriously injured, and more than half the population was homeless.
We present this advice from the Darwin Weather Bureau and the Northern Territory Emergency Services Organisation as a community service for top-end listeners. A cyclone is imminent.
It came down north of the Tiwi Islands and everybody expected it to just continue down to the west, but instead it came around the end of the Tiwis and then barreled straight in virtually towards Darwin.
Direct hit.
Yep, direct hit.
When it hit Darwin, Cyclone Tracy was the smallest cyclone ever recorded. Gale force winds extended just 48 kilometres from its core. But it was also the most destructive Australia has ever seen. A direct hit with devastating consequences. Official records say wind gusts from Cyclone Tracy reached 217 kilometres an hour. That was before the recording instrument at Darwin Airport malfunctioned. Whatever the actual speed, it's the noise survivors will never forget.
The noise and the terrified self it's never changed.
It was like riding a wave in a life raft. You know, the house was moving up and down. The noise was horrendous.
Daryl Manzi was a young police officer and father of 3 children under 4 when Tracy hit. His wife Maureen kept a clipping of every article written for years after the cyclone. But he doesn't need newspapers to remember what happened in the early hours of Christmas Day, 1974.
It was roaring and just this massive noise, and suddenly, bang, it reached us and hit the house. And within, I couldn't tell you, pretty quick time, the ceiling, the little manhole cover disappeared. Shone the torch up, then whoosh, all the roof disappeared.
With half of their house blown away, the young family huddled in the bathroom, convinced their time was up.
It just became worse and worse, and you thought, we're going to die. And I became quite calm, and I think Maureen did too. We can't do anything.
Anthony Bullock was 12 years old. He remembers watching his house start to disintegrate before his own eyes.
Dad shone the torch up to see what was left, and you could see the veranda just peeling away. Everything was just disappeared in a nanosecond.
As the cyclone began to intensify, his father directed his family to their downstairs toilet.
Unbeknown to me, the downstairs toilet was locked, and Dad goes, "The key, you got to get the key to downstairs." As I grabbed it, turned around, that bottom end of the kitchen just exploded out. It just disappeared. And all I could see was the flash of lightning and just bits of debris going everywhere. He grabbed me by the hand, and as we took one step, we just disappeared. Something just picked us up off the floor, off the stairs, and before we knew it, we're on the lawn 5-10 metres away from the veranda.
Somehow they made it to their downstairs bunker where, for the next 6 hours, they would endure Tracy's fury.
I remember the crashing and the sounds of things exploding around you, and all we had were in this concrete coffin, I'd like to call it, Besser block type coffin, and we just had straight floorboards above us, and you could see the floorboards start disappearing, and then before you knew it, you were getting absolutely drenched in rain, and it was absolutely relentless for hours and hours and hours.
This monument is made from steel girders that were taken from a house that was completely destroyed in Darwin's northern suburbs. If you look at it, you can see the ferocity of the winds and the damage they caused. Steel beams that are literally bent like they're pieces of spaghetti. Residents huddled inside, many convinced their next breath would be their last.
I could see my father's eyes, I could see my mother's eyes, I could see we're in really, really bad place now. She just started praying, and I thought, I don't know what to do. This is the first time in my life I actually thought of what death could look like. This is what it's going to be like.
I didn't know exactly what was happening outside other than hearing everything going on. So, of course, you feel like you're the only people left on the earth.
Sharon McAleer was also 12 when Tracy hit. She remembers her neighbour's house being picked up and crashing through her own.
It came through, smashed all that front of the house, and it's a brick house.
For many survivors, it was decades before they could talk about the horror of the night before Christmas.
And it's just that howling and the darkness and feeling that when you open that door, should you live through this, whether you're the only ones left. Hearing the stories of people that had lost their houses and that were out there in amongst it and were injured or didn't live the night. That terrifies me, it terrifies me now, and it did then, because it's always the what ifs.
I don't think I could bear to hear that noise again. Just horrendous.
It's frightening, really, really frightening.
Charlie King was one of 12 members of his family who bunkered down at his sister's house in the northern suburbs.
The noise that you heard was just frightening, and there were 12 of us together, some little kids amongst us. My wife was with me, she was 8 months pregnant. We were so worried about everything. Went and got some big mattresses, double bed mattresses, leant them up against the wall and got in behind them. I mean, thinking about it now, I get emotional every time, because it just imagine it just goes on for hours after hours. We were so afraid that roof, as it kept lifting and dropping and lifting and dropping, that it was going to blow away. And we knew that if it blew away, the walls would come down.
Some houses, remarkably, remained standing. Many were not so lucky.
A couple of houses up from us, where the family was living, they went to rush out during the cyclone, and the mother forgot her handbag and ran back into the house to get it and came out and got hit with a sheet of iron, and she died.
Alan Haynes had been at midnight mass with his sister, who was working as a nurse at the Darwin hospital. As they rushed home from the service, he realised he wouldn't make it back to his unit in the northern suburbs. So he spent the night at the hospital's nurses' quarters, helping staff to safety. As they gathered in one room, they realised one of the nurses was missing.
A group of us crawled along the corridor floor to her room and managed to get her out. The windows in her room had blowing in. The mattress she was hiding underneath an upturned mattress, and she was scared.
As Tracy's eye cast an eerie calm over the city, Alan ran to help sick and injured patients at the hospital.
It was a 3-storey building. The roof had gone and the walls were falling in on the top floor. You choose to not really remember some of the detail because it wasn't good.
By dawn on Christmas Day, the presents that had been wrapped up under Christmas trees or stashed away in storerooms lay buried under piles of debris. This would be a Christmas like no other. One that still lives in the memory of those who survived to witness the carnage caused by Tracy's might.
Mine, I feel over time now, is a survivor's guilt, because I'm like this for, 48 Christmases is what I'm like at this time.
Walls had been ripped from houses, steel power poles were bent like plasticine. Cars and caravans were tipped upside down.
Planes, although well tied down, were skittled like ninepins.
The first thing I saw in the morning was an entire house, complete. It had just been picked up and put down.
Rob Wesley Smith walked out of his unit at dawn on Christmas morning. These are some of the first photographs taken of Tracy's destruction. Most of the city, including many of its famous landmarks, had been destroyed.
As soon as it got daylight enough, I walked down with my camera. Cars all over the place, debris, some buildings broken down, some still standing. The Vic Hotel was a solid building and it had a lot of damage.
The damage was worse in the city's north. Entire suburbs were blown away, leaving little more than a mangled mess of steel and debris. As people emerged from the wreckage of their homes, they could barely believe their eyes.
I said, Dad, there's nothing left. He goes, what do you mean there's nothing left? Isn't it bullshit? He goes, there's nothing. I said, Dad, there's nothing out here. It's gone. Everything's gone. When I first looked out the window, I just thought, I said to Maureen, I think we're the only ones alive.
Residents examined the scale of the damage, houses with walls completely blown away. Many elevated homes were left with nothing but the floorboards, or dance floors as they came to be known. This is all that was left of Aileen Scott's brother's house.
Their house imploded on them and they climbed down the plumbing to get underneath their house and into their car. They thought they were the only people alive in their area. It was just so much devastation. And then gradually a neighbour's head popped up here and popped up there, and they realised they weren't the only people alive.
People wandered through the wreckage doing their best to salvage anything that wasn't completely destroyed.
How much is left of your home?
Very little of the home, but thank the Lord we were very fortunate. We were able to salvage quite a few things. Whether they're workable or not, it's a different thing, but to wake up on Christmas morning and it looked as if a bomb had hit Darwin. I've never seen a war, but I can imagine that's what it would have looked like.
Cyclone Tracy destroyed 80% of the houses in Darwin and 70% of its buildings, including here at the Old Town Hall, the remnants of which have been left as a reminder of the devastation of this killer storm. By the time Tracy had passed through Darwin, 25,000 of the city's 47,000 residents were homeless. But the buildings weren't the only things destroyed. Tracy wiped out almost all of the city's critical infrastructure. There was no power, no running water, and almost no communication with the outside world. For Alan Haynes' mother in Adelaide, it would be a week before she knew her children were alive.
She'd actually written a letter to us. And I don't have it anymore. But it was A mother's plea to her children, thank God, or please God, we'll all be okay. And we were.
The 66 people killed in Cyclone Tracy are remembered on this plaque at Darwin's council headquarters. Those who survived did so with a lot of luck and more than a few prayers.
I don't know how we survived. I still, to this day, every time I talk about it, the first thing is I say, and I hear this ad nauseum, people say, I don't know how we survived. We should have died. You know, the flimsy sort of structures that people manage to hide in, or just by pure freak of nature, you know, a massive beam or something landed beside them or took that part of the house that not them. But we've got to remember that, you know, at least 66 people didn't make it that night.
As residents slowly rose from the piles of debris that had once been their homes, they congregated at local schools. Thoughts quickly turned to a new danger as the threat of disease loomed large. Clean water was transported by any means available. Fogging machines were deployed to the suburbs and the Navy was brought in to begin the clean-up operation. Authorities decided the best course of action was to evacuate most of the city's residents. But that decision would bring its own trauma.
It was sadness, it was so sad. And as we got out to go on, I remember sitting on the old blue buses at the airport to be evacuated, and there was no way I wanted to go.
Good evening. Operation Airlift is well underway tonight as Australia's biggest peacetime evacuation continues around the clock.
Cyclone Tracy is a tale of tragedy and loss, but it's also a story of mateship and resilience in the face of extraordinary hardship. Come Christmas Day, more than half the city was homeless and hundreds were seriously injured.
It was panic. People were injured, many of them, but we didn't know how many, and we also couldn't get to a lot of them at that stage because the roads were all blocked with debris. There was no running water. There was sewage over the roads from broken lines. There was no power, and there were a range of people that all they had, in fact, was what they were wearing.
Royal Australian Air Force physician Jeff Thompson had been on leave in New South Wales when the cyclone struck. He was immediately ordered back to Darwin to lead the RAF's evacuation mission. The sight of his home city as he flew in has never left him.
I saw something akin to what Hiroshima looked like. There were no leaves on any trees. There were many trees that were broken down. The majority of houses that we could see on that short approach to the runway were without roofs or with the walls.
Medicine was in short supply and there were fears of a serious outbreak of typhoid or cholera. The most seriously injured were the first to be flown out, loaded into specially equipped Hercules aircraft. Among them was Frida Brocker. She'd suffered a serious cut to her leg when her neighbour's roof crashed into her house as she sheltered in the toilet with her husband Nick and their 2-year-old daughter Brenda.
It smashed the toilet, so maybe that did my leg. I don't know, but I had Brenda, I was nursing her, and she was thrown into the mattress there. And I just ran. I got under another mattress, but I panicked, of course. And then I ran out, and Nick had picked up Brenda, the screaming child, wondering what was happening. And I ran out, and I fell in the mud.
Severely injured, Frida was taken to Darwin Airport and loaded onto a plane bound for Brisbane. She thought her 2-year-old daughter had stayed behind with her husband. Little did she know, she was on the same plane. While her mother was rushed to Brisbane Hospital, these pictures show 2-year-old Brenda Brocker arriving at the city's airport into the arms of the Salvation Army.
She's got a tag around her leg because, that's the only way that they would have known that her name was, because she had nothing else. So they'd put this luggage tag around her leg with her name on it, and she was handed to the Salvation Army family to Beulah Harris at the time, was her name.
Many of the less seriously injured were forced to wait in Darwin for days.
Can I ask what happened to you physically?
Yeah, we sort of huddled in our toilet in the house that we were in, and as it blew apart, something slashed through my arm, and I've been in hospital ever since.
What about the wife and kids?
Miraculously, they're fitting well.
You know where you're going?
Melbourne, I hope.
How many in the family?
I've got 6 children.
And what about this particular baby?
This baby's just come out of the hospital. She's 2 weeks old and she was a month prem, and she had to be taken out because the hospital hasn't got the facilities for them. No water, they're nearly out of water, so they have to take them out.
For some, the wait to get out seemed to take forever.
How long have you been trying to get out?
Well, quite a few hours now.
Do you feel sad about leaving Darwin?
Yes, I do. I'm sad about a lot of things.
This is really unbelievable, isn't it?
Well, it's certainly quite an experience.
Can you explain just what is happening right here in the arrivals terminal?
Well, at the moment we've got people coming through, as you can see, from the planes, and they're being paid their social security benefits at the terminal as they disembark from the plane. And the setup here is basically to give them any essentials that they need to see them for the immediate moment, and then we're taking them through with their luggage and arranging transport outside at the door to wherever they need to go, interstate or local. It's free phone calls, taxis, buses, the whole works.
For Frida Brocker, this army would literally be her salvation. The Fishley family, who her daughter would later come to call Nan and Pop, took in 2-year-old Brenda and loved her as their own until she could be reunited with her mother.
They brought her in, and they'd made some clothing for her and everything, and they just were wonderful.
Cyclone Tracy caused the largest peacetime evacuation this country has ever seen. More than 25,000 people were flown out of Darwin in either civilian or military aircraft. Almost 10,000 more left by road.
The women, they potentially were leaving their partners behind. Some of those people actually left dead people behind. So the trauma of that it's just incredible to watch.
Some survivors never came back. For those who did, the scars of Christmas 1974 would last a lifetime.
For a doctor, I guess the medicine is might be described by other people as horrific, but to me, it was the unbelievable emotional trauma of the whole thing. You know, people were confused. I think I said to somebody recently, we had Aussie men racing up into each other in the streets when they realised, and giving each other an enormous hug and saying, "Thank Christ you're alive."
What's the situation up there at the present time? Very bad, is it? What have you lost?
We've kept our house, but we've lost everything else. My family's lost everything.
Will you be going back to Darwin yourself?
I hope so.
One of these days, very soon, you hope. Is this your little baby?
Yes.
Where's your wife?
Prince of Wales.
She came down, yesterday or something, did she?
Christmas Eve, Christmas Day she left.
I see.
She arrived, Boxing Day here.
How's the little baby at the moment?
No worries, they're completely under.
Oh, beautiful.
Boy or a girl?
Boy.
Boy?
No.
You must be dreadfully upset to be away from your wife at this particular time.
Well, I'm glad she's out, and I didn't know she was really cool up until about 5:30 last night when I got through to her parents in Alice Springs.
Mm-hmm. What is it like up there at this moment still?
Oh, dear. She can't say it.
For many survivors, the scars of Cyclone Tracy never went away.
I know my mother suffered traumatically for years afterwards because she stayed in Darwin up until the 1990s, and every time we had a large storm come through, she would put on a set of earmuffs, she'd go into the bedroom, put the doonas over her, whatever she could just to escape a normal storm coming across.
That emotional turmoil continued for years, particularly with the kids who didn't want to go to the toilet and close the door because that's where they were during the cyclone.
Maybe I wish I hadn't been there. But that's pointless. I was. And I'm okay. I hardly got a scratch. But for many people, that wasn't that simple.
There was no counselling offered in 1974 and little time for self-reflection. For those left behind after the evacuation, there was work to be done.
Now begins the truly massive job of cleaning up. On almost every street, scenes are taking place like this. Tractors and front-end loaders like this are being loaded up with the debris of the houses that have been ripped apart in the storm.
There were 11,000 left here. All of us who were left here post the evacuation just got on and did stuff.
Major General Alan Stretton led the relief effort.
It's the greatest memory I have because it just shows what can be achieved if everyone works towards the same goal.
By February 1975, Prime Minister Gough Whitlam had announced the creation of the Darwin Reconstruction Commission.
Now, the great thing I have to say to the people of Darwin is that the Australian government is determined to see that Darwin is rebuilt and restored, and the citizens of Darwin are rehabilitated and returned.
We rebuilt the city in record time. They were expecting 5 years. We managed to get it done in 3, and people slowly but surely came back.
We had a fury of development for 20 years in Darwin. No one even had time to even talk about it.
There was one thing, however, that wasn't built. Darwin has never had a permanent memorial to recognise Cyclone Tracy. That's about to change.
We'll have these 5 frangipani flowers, one over there, one over there, one over there, and along here will be the shelter, we're calling it. It'll look out.
Richard Creswick is the chair of the Remembering Cyclone Tracy Committee. He's standing at East Point, where Tracy first crossed the coast.
So that's why we've selected this particular point as the place for a suitable memorial, a memorial that people have wanted for 50 years, really.
Early this Christmas Day, hundreds of survivors will gather for the official opening and to reflect on the day that changed their lives forever.
People want some place where they can gather, think, contemplate, commemorate, and just think about what Cyclone Tracy meant to them.
This commemorative event on Christmas Day is going to be so important to so many people. I think there's going to be a lot of old lost souls.
In the immediate aftermath of Cyclone Tracy, there were questions about whether the city would even be rebuilt on its existing location. Thankfully, it was. Tracy led to improved construction standards, and today Darwin is a thriving, vibrant tropical city, home to more than 150,000 people.
Our people are determined, and since that time we've continued to grow as a beautiful city, and I look forward to seeing that continue into the future.
As you look over the city today, it's hard to believe that 50 years ago, this was a scene of complete and utter destruction. Cyclone Tracy is a story of trauma and loss, but it's also a story of hope and compassion. A story of how Australians from all corners of the country stopped to help the residents of a broken city in its hour of need. And it's a story of resilience, the residents of this frontier town who suffered unimaginable pain but dusted themselves off and fought through adversity to rebuild this beautiful place they call home.
I'm an optimist, and I'm perpetually surprised how this community has managed to deal with all of this and produce a place that is as bloody wonderful as it is.